Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everybody. I can see that people are joining for this impromptu live update. I did a live update for the lunation a couple of weeks ago, I think, and it went quite well. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do it again. So here I am. Hello, wonderful people. So today, obviously, as you can see from the headline of this live update, we are going to be talking about the solar eclipse in Scorpio happening on the 25th of October at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello from dark London right now, from cloudy London right now. I can see that people from all over are joining, and that's awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Connecting people. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Folks, I'm going to say something from the very beginning. Obviously, I'm giving people a minute or so to join. Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate it. So I'm going to give people a minute or so to join. And then once I jump into the solar eclipse update, I will not be able to look at the chat. So if you're asking me things, please know that I'm not ignoring you. I'm actually going through my notes. I'm also going live on my phone, and I've still yet to figure exactly how to go back over old comments. Let's see. Oh, now I can see how I can go back over them. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Braddy, hi. Hello, hello, hello. Before we dive in, I want to mention a couple of things. First and foremost, a reminder that on the 29th of October and on the 5th of November, I am running a natal chart interpretation masterclass. If you haven't joined yet, and if you are interested in advancing your natal chart interpretation skills, I've left a link in the description of this video for you to join the course. This is not a beginner's course, by the way. So if you have already a good understanding of the symbolism of houses, of signs, of planets, and you want to learn how to put it all together, you want to get a framework in terms of building your natal chart analyses, then I do recommend that you join. We're going to get together on the 29th of October and on the 5th of November. Obviously, the masterclass is also going to be recorded. So if you can't join live one of the two parts of the masterclass, you will get the recording so you can rewatch. And you can also rewatch as many times as you like if you want to take notes and so on. I'm going to share my tips as a consulting astrologer. Of course, I'm going to also share with you my philosophy in terms of natal chart interpretation. And obviously, you're going to have the opportunity to ask me as many questions as you like at the end of each of the two parts. So it's a two-part masterclass, and obviously I recommend that you join both, but if you can't join both, then you will have the opportunity to rewatch the recording if you want to. Will it be interactive? That's one of the questions. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the course material, and at the end of each of the two parts, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. I don't know if that's interactive enough for you. If it isn't, my apologies. That's the way that the course is structured. I would say there's going to be plenty of examples to illustrate the course material that we go through. You're also going to get a big fat PowerPoint presentation with everything written down. It's basically as if I had written down your notes for you. So if you're interested in advancing in If you're interested in getting better at natal chart interpretation, then I do recommend that you join this course, with a big caveat that it is not a course for beginners. I am planning to do a course for complete beginners, probably next year, so not yet. Also, another very important announcement. If you go to my YouTube channel, you're gonna see that there is a section called membership. So you can now become a member on YouTube. If you want to get access from the end of this month onwards to members only live streams, then I do recommend that you join my membership program. Joining my membership program is also very, very helpful for me, because it basically helps me to create content on YouTube that is accessible for all. So if you want to support my channel, if you appreciate my work, then I would absolutely super appreciate you joining my YouTube membership program. And last but not least, don't forget, you can always send a super thanks, both for live videos and also for recorded videos. Once again, if my videos, if my content is helpful, then do share the energy, do kind of like send back some of that energy in the form of a super thanks, which is basically a donation powered by YouTube. Folks, I can see that there's quite a few of us here now, so I'm going to dive into the 25th of October solar eclipse in Scorpio update. Again, please forgive me if I do not look at the chat, because I have lots of notes to go through. I'm not ignoring you, I'm just going through my notes, and I don't want to lose track. Let's dive in. So first and foremost, let's talk about eclipses a little bit. Eclipses occur. Oh, thank you so much for the super chat, Braddy. So much love to you. So eclipses occur when the sun, the earth, and the moon align with the moon's nodes. We have already experienced eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis earlier this year and last year, end of last year's fall in the northern hemisphere. This year we have experienced eclipses on the 30th of April and on the 15th of May. The first one on the 30th of April was a solar eclipse in Taurus. The second one on the 15th of May was a lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Now we're experiencing a solar eclipse in Scorpio, which is basically a new moon. A new moon on steroids, as I like to say. It's a supercharged new moon, so a new beginning. That is the symbolism of a new moon. Eclipses in general also bring in an element of fate. They bring in an element of destiny, you could say. Why? Because eclipses happen in the signs that the nodal axis is transiting. The north node, south node axis is transiting. And we know, or we should know by now, and it's no problem if we don't. If you did not know this, the north node, south node axis is the so-called axis of destiny. So wherever this axis is in the sky, whatever signs it's transiting, it may feel like we are dealing with fated, predestined events that shape our path moving forward, but events that we did not necessarily choose to experience, hence the association with fate. So eclipses in general are also associated with fated events. We have fated encounters. We have fated or predestined experiences, and so on. We meet influential people. We sometimes release people from our life, or some people exit our life. And that shapes the course of our path. That shapes the course of our destiny. That is the symbolism of eclipses in general. So, like I said, eclipses occur when the sun, the earth, and the moon align with the moon's nodes, with the nodal axis. When two eclipses are separated by a period of 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, This is called a Saros. They share a very similar geometry. The two eclipses occur at the same lunar node, with the moon at nearly the same distance from Earth and at the same time of the year. They don't have to occur in the same sign. The meaning of each Saros series, so each eclipse belongs to a Saros series, right? The meaning of each Saros series is determined by the aspects that were present at the first eclipse of the series. So we are going to talk of the Saros series of this eclipse. It basically started in the year 1049, the Saros series that this eclipse belongs to, and it is going to end this Saros series in the year 2347. Eclipses somehow feel like they bring into our life unexpected events, out of the blue events, and so on. However, each eclipse that is part of a Saros series, like I said, carries with it the symbolism of the eclipse that kicked off the Saros series. This is useful in particular when it comes to doing forecasts for the collective, forecasts for humanity in general. Obviously, none of us is going to live until the year 2347. So that's why when it comes to Saros series, I recommend that, especially those who are interested in mundane astrology, so the astrology of countries and so on, I do recommend that they use Saros series to glean the symbolism of an eclipse for the collective, I'd say. So this eclipse belongs to solar Saros 124, according to the NASA website. It is a partial eclipse that is visible from the following regions around the world. Why is it important that it's visible from specific areas around the world? Because it is said that the parts around the world where we can see the eclipse from are likely to feel the eclipse the most. Again, this is very relevant for mundane astrology, so for the astrology of countries, of the collective, of society in general. So this eclipse on the 25th of October is going to be visible from Europe, Northeast Africa, the Middle East, and Western Asia. It is very visible. The path of the eclipse is very, very, very visible from Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, we all know we're listening to the news. My apologies if the headline says lunar eclipse. Please forgive me, it's a solar eclipse. It's a new moon. I'm going to amend that after the live is over. So this eclipse is going to be very visible from Russia and Ukraine. So we're probably going to see in the news headlines connected with the development of the war, of the situation in Russia and in Ukraine. It may feel like a new beginning is emerging in this conflict that is affecting, well, it's affecting the entire world basically, but obviously these two countries more than other countries. The eclipse on the 25th of October, the solar eclipse, is happening at 2 degrees of Scorpio. So from an individual perspective, if you look at your chart and you see that you have planets in the natal chart or angles in the natal chart around 2 degrees of fixed signs. The fixed signs are Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, Leo. If you have planets around 2 degrees of fixed signs, you're probably going to feel this eclipse the most. It speaks to you directly. If you have planets around 15 degrees of fixed signs, you may not feel this eclipse that much. So always remember to pay attention to the degrees of celestial events and whether they trigger the degrees of your natal planets and of your natal angles, the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and IC. If you have planetary placements in your natal chart around 2 degrees of Pisces and Cancer, also of Virgo and Capricorn, this eclipse may actually feel like quite an auspicious one, because the eclipse is going to form a harmonious aspect with your planetary placements. Harmonious aspects are felt as being more pleasant. Tense aspects, such as the square and the opposition, are felt as more challenging in general. Now, do keep in mind that pleasant doesn't mean good and challenging doesn't mean bad, even though we may associate on a day-to-day basis pleasure with things being good and whatever is hard and difficult with things being bad, I'd say. This eclipse, the solar eclipse, is a conjunction between the sun and the moon in Scorpio. The south node is also in Scorpio, and Venus is in Scorpio as well. The south node is quite far. It's at 13 degrees of Scorpio. The sun, the moon, and Venus are at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Mars, which is the ruler of the eclipse, because Mars rules Scorpio in traditional astrology, is in Gemini, trining Mercury in Libra. Mars, however, is going to go retrograde at the end of October. It's going to stay retrograde until the 12th of January. And in November, especially around the 19th of November, maybe also the week before, the week after, in November, it is going to square Neptune in Pisces. I like the fact that the eclipse is conjunct Venus because it may sweeten the deal. It may sweeten the fated events that we experience. It's also going to put the spotlight on relationships, on romance, on connections, on diplomacy, on the idea of fairness, on the idea of compromise, of meeting people halfway. It's going to put the spotlight onto our values in general. It may also put the spotlight on topics connected with women, and especially connected with women's sexuality, because Scorpio is a sign that is very much linked with intimacy and sexuality. Mars forming a harmonious aspect to Mercury makes me think that there could be news that is quite uplifting, maybe, that is seen as being positive, news of some form of victory, news of some form of success. Keep in mind, however, that Mars is going to go retrograde at the end of the month. So even though there may be news of some form of success, and there may be this feeling of, oh, our efforts to push an idea forward are paying off, our efforts to speak our truth, they're paying off, and we're reaching some form of agreement. Even though the eclipse may make us feel like that's the case, Mars going retrograde might make us feel like, oh no, things are slowing down once again, and we have to retrace our steps. We may see the effects of the eclipse fully coming to fruition in 2023, in June of 2023 to be more precise. Remember that a new moon, and therefore a new moon solar eclipse, is a seed moment. Something is being born. It will take a while for things to come to fruition, right? So we may see the full effects of the eclipse in June of 2023, especially in the second half of June of 2023. Why? Because that is when the nodal axis reaches, so the north node, south node axis, reaches the degree of the eclipse. So pay attention to who you meet, who you connect with, what you kick off around the 25th of October, week before, week after, because you may see things coming to fruition next year in June, especially in the second half of June. Or let's say you may feel like there aren't any specific kind of like super consequential events or big exciting stuff happening in your life at the time of the eclipse. And then in June of next year, you're like, oh no, this person who I met around the 25th of October, or this relationship that I started, or this relationship that I dissolved in order to make room for healing, now I can finally see the results. That's what I would keep in mind. Also, please pay attention next year to the eclipse on the 5th of May, because that's going to be a full moon lunar eclipse 6 months from now, when again, we may see something coming to completion and to fruition linked with the events and the people and the ideas and the themes that pop up in your life at the time of this eclipse on the 25th of October. This is an emotionally supercharged eclipse, an emotionally supercharged new beginning. Why? Because Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Water equals emotions, feelings, and so on. So an emotionally supercharged new beginning that ushers in transformation and rebirth, connected with the release of certain values, connected with the release of certain relationships, connected with even the release of certain sources of pleasure. Pleasure isn't necessarily always good. Sorry, I'm being a little bit of a judgy Judy right here. Just because something is pleasant, it doesn't mean that it can't destroy us. Have you heard of the term guilty pleasures? I suppose that's what vices are. A source of pleasure turning into a form of entrapment. So this eclipse could bring a new beginning connected with the release of a source of pleasure that we know is toxic, that we may realize is doing more damage. It is indeed a solar eclipse. Please forgive me. I'm going to change the headline after the live is over. My apologies, my apologies, my apologies. That's what happens when you do impromptu things. Forgive me. This eclipse is likely to put the spotlight on topics connected with intimacy, sex, the depths of our psyche, death and rebirth, taboo topics, what lies hidden and buried, power dynamics, and hidden resources. Scorpio is also linked with power play, and I do believe that power play is a political thing in general. Obviously, it's not just something that happens in politics. It happens in relationships and corporations and so on. So this eclipse is likely to put the spotlight onto power dynamics. A specific power dynamic may be released at the time of this eclipse to make room for a new beginning, right? So think of it as a rebirth in which we let go of something. Judith Hill, who by the way is an absolute legend, and if you're not reading her books, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do. Judith Hill on her website, judithhillastrology.com, says the following. Solar south node eclipses like this one, this is a solar south node eclipse, bring in a power outage or release into the sign and the natal house that they occur in, or regarding the specific affairs and signification governed by the planets that they conjunct. In this case, the eclipse is going to conjunct Venus. The outflowing tide suggested by the south node. So remember, at this eclipse, we're letting go of something, right? The outflowing tide suggested by a south node eclipse can be surprisingly positive for cleansing, releasing, giving, accepting, forgiving, letting go, and sometimes spiritual epiphanies. If we let go, we make room for building something from the ground up. Remember, ultimately, that eclipses can be a wild card. And the best thing that we can do when dealing with wild card events is to accept what is and to roll with it rather than force it, rather than go against it. Thank you so much, Miss Amy. I appreciate your words and your support and your feedback. So folks, let's dive into the update for each of the 12 zodiac signs. Everyone's gonna go through a powerful release, emotional release that brings in a new beginning. The people, like I mentioned previously, that have planets around 2 degrees of fixed signs, maybe also a few degrees before and after, are going to feel this eclipse the most. Other people may notice it, but maybe it doesn't necessarily feel that personal to them, as if it affects them directly. I have also one massive favor to ask you folks. Because I'm going to go into the update for each of the 12 zodiac signs, if someone could please write down the timestamps for each of the 12 zodiac signs, that would be much appreciated. And also don't forget, if this update is useful and helpful, you can always leave me a super thanks, a super chat, as a token of your appreciation. Remember also to listen to the update for your rising sign above everything else. That's it. Let's talk about Aries. So, Aries, 25th of October, solar eclipse in Scorpio, week before, week after. This is happening in your 8th house. There's a conjunction here between the sun, the moon, Venus, and also the south node is there, even though it's not exactly conjunct the sun and the moon. Now, the sun for you, Aries, rules your 5th house, the moon rules your 4th house of home, and Venus rules your 2nd house of income and your 7th house of relationships. What's going on here is the following. You may release an emotional trauma connected with your childhood, and that has been impacting your relationship sector, maybe not necessarily in the most pleasant of ways. You may have a psychological breakthrough, my dear Aries, especially Aries risings. And I can see someone that says that they have a planet around 29 degrees of Aries. Yes, you're going to feel the eclipse as well very strongly, because it's close to 2 degrees of Scorpio. It may feel like you have an aha moment, a moment of awakening, of letting go, of releasing an emotional trauma connected with your past, connected with your family, connected with your childhood, something that's been getting in the way of your partnerships. You may also let go of a relationship, a partnership that has been in your life for a very long time, maybe since childhood. If you are in a partnership, your partner may experience a new beginning in terms of their financial life. They could leave behind an old source of income, and that also affects you as their person, as their life partner. It may feel like you also have a very productive, a very useful, a very helpful conversation with either a life partner or a business partner, in which you may decide to leave an element of the relationship behind. Why? Because Mars, the ruler of the eclipse, is in Gemini in your 3rd house of communication, trining Mercury in Libra in your 7th house of relationships. Also, a partner could open up to you about something that has been plaguing them emotionally. So a partner could reveal a secret, something that they have been holding on to, and all of a sudden the relationship is much stronger and it makes room for a deeper bond, I would say. You may also release around this time a sense of being dependent, maybe emotionally dependent upon the resources of a partner, be it a business partner or a life partner. And as a result of that, it may actually feel like the partnership is headed towards much better times. So if you no longer need, in order to feel safe and stable and secure, the resource from a partner, be it emotional or financial, it could actually make room for a new dynamic within the relationship. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now let us move on to Taurus. Please, 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 folks, if someone can write down the timestamps for each sign, that would be so appreciated. Thank you. Taurus suns and Taurus risings, especially Taurus risings. This eclipse is happening in your 7th house, okay? So in your 7th house of relationships, it does bring in a new beginning relationship-wise, a new beginning in which you may actually let go of an old wound connected with partnerships, connected with relationships, maybe an old wound that has been keeping you from fully being yourself. You may also decide, some Taurians might decide to leave behind an obsession with an old partner. They might decide to leave behind a relationship altogether in order to make room for a much more fulfilling relationship. There could also be an experience, especially if you're in a partnership, there could be an experience of your partner letting go of something that has been plaguing them at a soul level. And that was negatively impacting the relationship between the two of you. So your partner could open up and maybe talk about something. They could say, listen, I know I've been maybe keeping this from you because I didn't want to hurt you or I didn't want to burden you with what I felt, but now I feel like I need to open up. A partner could release an old trauma, which makes room for a more enjoyable experience within the relationship overall. You may also release an old image that you had of yourself, Taurus, within romantic relationships, within romantic partnerships. So if you used to think of yourself as, I don't know, the partner that is always there for the other person, that is going to, I don't know, put their needs aside and just prioritize your partner's needs, you may have an aha moment in which you realize, listen, I don't have to put my needs aside. I don't have to neglect myself. I don't have to define myself as the one that sacrifices themselves for the sake of the partner. I can ask for what I need within the relationship. You could also have fated encounters, Taurus, with people from your past, because the South Node generally brings in people from our past. You may revisit old, let's say, experiences connected with relationships, and it may feel like you're going through an emotional purging, I'd say. You could also connect with someone who feels like they're coming into your life from, I don't know, like a previous lifetime, because the North Node, South Node axis being the axis of destiny, there could be this sense of, oh, I just met you, but it feels like we've known each other since always. We've known each other forever. Now, if you are a Gemini sun or a Gemini rising, especially a Gemini rising, this eclipse is happening in your 6th house of health and day-to-day work. Let's see. Mars in your 1st house is trining Mercury in your 5th house of romantic love. It feels like you are potentially letting go of an old habit, my dear Geminis, to make room for a new set of rituals, a new set of routines, a new set of daily habits that will allow you to enjoy life more, that will allow you to enjoy your romantic relationships more, that will allow you to maybe tap into your passions a lot more, my dear Geminis. You could also release a job in order to make room for another job that gets you in a space where you can have a better work-pleasure balance. You may also let go of something pleasurable that was negatively impacting your health. You might have that aha moment where you say, listen, I know that I can experience pleasure. I can experience enjoyment without doing this thing that basically makes me feel like SH something something. I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to be censored. You could also experience, my dear Geminis, people or someone in particular leaving your team at work. There could be like a sudden departure of some sorts. You don't seem to be sad about it at all. If anything, you're like, yeah, I can take the lead. I can be in charge after this. I can do more of what I like at work because this person is leaving, I'd say. You may also clear the air with someone at work, and that makes room for you being more assertive, let's say, in a work environment, and maybe just more confident, not even necessarily assertive. My dear Cancerians, Cancer Suns and Cancer Risings, 25th of October, solar eclipse in Scorpio, week before, week after. The eclipse is happening in your 5th house of romantic love and children and enjoyment and passions and hobbies. You may have, especially if you're single, what feels like a fated encounter with a romantic partner. Something that helps you understand maybe one of your blind spots, coming from childhood, coming from your upbringing, coming from the way that you were raised, coming from maybe witnessing the relationship between your parents. You could also release the emotional attachment to an old romantic partner, and that makes you feel much more at peace in your private life. You may also have what feels like a fated experience in terms of connecting with something that fulfills you emotionally in private. Why does it feel like a fated experience? Just because it feels like you've connected with something that is very familiar somehow, that brings a sense of comfort, that brings a sense of, oh, I know this and I've done this and I understand this, and this is very, very helpful. You could feel inspired to revisit old childhood passions or maybe passions that you've left aside, that you've put aside for a very, very long time. And that could be very conducive to a sense of emotional and spiritual breakthrough. Some of you may release an old source of enjoyment, an old hobby, an old passion, just because you realize it is no longer a healthy thing for you. You may also release an old trauma connected with your childhood, and maybe also connected with not feeling special enough and not feeling appreciated and validated enough as a child. This eclipse could involve a lot of crying, obviously, but it's probably going to be the good crying, the crying in which you forgive yourself, maybe in which you forgive also a parent, in which you realize, listen, they did the best that they could with the tools that they had, I would say. Now, if you are a Leo sun or a Leo rising, Leos, 25th of October, week before, week after, the solar eclipse in Scorpio is happening in your 4th house of home. Are you leaving behind a home, Leos? Are you saying goodbye to a home? Are you also saying goodbye to an emotional wound coming from your past? Maybe something connected with the way that your parents raised you. Very, very, very possibly. You could also forgive a parent around this time. There could be a sense of fated events happening or fated developments happening in relation to your home and living situation. So maybe all of a sudden there's news that you have to move or that you have to leave a home behind. I'd say that it can be quite surprising, but on the other hand, you seem to be very excited about the future of your living situation in general, just because Mars, which is the ruler of the eclipse, is very nicely aspected to Mercury in your 3rd house. So I'd say that you definitely see the positive side in leaving someone behind. You could move, some people could move out of their parents' home. Some people could have others moving out of their home. So it's almost kind of like making space for a new beginning in your private life because, I don't know, maybe a child is getting out of your house. Maybe an old colleagues or like a roommate or a house buddy. I don't know what they're called. Maybe they're moving out and you're like, yes, I can recenter. I can recenter myself in some form or another. I'd say that you're also having probably very powerful experiences of an emotional nature connected with your past, my dear Leos, in which you realize maybe how holding on to past events has been keeping you from going after your goals, from heading straight in the direction of your goals and your objectives. I like whatever it is that you're releasing, my dear Leos. If you are a Virgo sun or a Virgo rising, 25th of October, week before, week after, this solar eclipse is happening in, let's see, in your third house. Are you wrapping up? Are you ready to, let's say goodbye? Are you wrapping up your relationship with maybe an old means of transportation? Maybe your old car, or maybe your old bike. Maybe you're finally selling it. Maybe you're ready to let it go. It feels like you could be selling something around this time, my dear Virgos, especially Virgo risings, something that is likely to bring in a significant amount of money. You could also feel like you're going through a new beginning when it comes to the way in which you communicate in a work environment, in your professional life. And it may feel like you have left behind this state of stress and anxiety and maybe tension and maybe even fear or paranoia around not saying the right thing, around using the wrong words, around how you're going to be perceived, around how people are going to react to your words, to what you have to say to them. So I'd say that you are ready to communicate in a new way, my dear Virgos, especially in a professional environment, a way that is maybe not so stressful, that is putting less pressure on you emotionally. There could also be sudden unexpected news making their way to you, connected with siblings. So especially if you do have siblings, there could be news about, I don't know, your siblings going through, I want to say going through a breakup, and you actually feeling really happy for them because maybe they were in a toxic relationship of some sorts. Remember that astrology is only archetypally predictive, so I'm obviously giving scenarios as to what is likely to happen, but astrology does not tell us precisely how things play out. Astrology tells us where we meet certain energies, how we're likely to feel during a transit, but it doesn't tell us precisely how things play out. So keep that in mind. We're at Virgo rising, 2 more signs to go until we reach Scorpio. I will say this, Virgos. It feels like you have to say something, you have to get something off your chest, and you may finally get it off your chest in a work environment, and you may feel much more confident about it. But then Mars goes retrograde at the end of the month, so it may feel like, oh, I said it and it felt so empowering, but now I'm not necessarily that sure as to how this will impact me in a positive way moving forward. I'm just gonna say, wait for Mars in retrograde to be over in January, and you're gonna start seeing some results. So don't lose faith. My dear Libras, Libra suns and Libra risings, 25th of October, week before, week after, the solar eclipse in Scorpio is happening in your second house. You may release around this time a source of income that you were emotionally attached to. You may also release an old set of values that was actually maybe negatively impacting you from an emotional standpoint. You may also release an old way of looking at your financial sector. Maybe there was this sort of extreme approach to money and finances. It was all or nothing. You were either kind of like splashing it on like nice stuff or not spending any money at all. So you could release maybe what feels like an extreme attitude towards your financial life, towards your budget. There could also be someone from your past reaching out to you saying, listen, I've got this opportunity for you financially. Are you interested? Let's work together. You may also have an epiphany in terms of what you bring to the table from a values perspective, from a skills perspective, from a resources perspective. So your belief system might go through a change in terms of what you are appreciated for, what you are valued for, my dear Libras. Overall, I'm liking this eclipse for you. If you do feel inspired to let go of an old source of income, I would do it. Just because you may realize that this is no longer who you are. Scorpios, Scorpio risings, and Scorpio suns, but especially Scorpio risings. 25th of October, week before, week after, there's a solar eclipse in your first house of identity and new beginnings. Scorpios, you're letting go of an old wound, an old trauma connected with how you see yourself, connected with your sense of identity, also connected with your relationship with your body. So you may feel ready to almost like kick off a new chapter of self-growth and self-development that is being powered by you letting go, you pushing out of your life an old sense of self, an old identity. I would even say an old source of suffering, maybe, because Venus is also the ruler of your 12th house, and Venus is conjunct this eclipse. Mars, the ruler of the eclipse, is in the 8th house, and it is trining Mercury and Libra in your 12th house. Once again, this makes me think that you're having some sort of epiphany in terms of a personal wound, in terms of a trauma, in terms of an old emotional attachment that has been keeping you in a place of stagnation on a personal level. You may have some sort of awakening connected with yourself in which you say, I'm not this. I am not this anymore. I used to be this. I used to identify with this trauma. I used to identify with this instance in which I was a victim. I am not this anymore. I choose to no longer identify myself with this instance of suffering. It's a very powerful rebirth for you, my dear Scorpios, I would say. Now, if you are a Sagittarius sun or a Sagittarius rising, 25th of October, week before, week after, the eclipse is happening in your 12th house. Venus is the ruler of your 11th house of groups of people and friends. Venus, which is conjunct the eclipse, is also the ruler of your 6th house of health and day-to-day work. Let's see. Sagittarius. This eclipse is putting the spotlight on your blind spots, on how you have been sabotaging yourself, maybe on what's been going on behind the scenes that has been keeping you maybe from achieving your goals, that has been maybe keeping you from hitting your targets. You could release at this time, my dear Sagittarius, an old group of people, an old friendship. You may realize that you were holding on to a bond with a friend or a group of people, holding on to a bond that had as its foundation trauma, suffering, pain. And you may have this aha moment in which you say, I no longer want to hang out with these people who I connected with just because I was in this place of suffering. Some of you Sagittarians may also kick off a new chapter from a spiritual standpoint. You may feel like someone that's in your life, such as a consultant, a partner. It could be a life partner, it could be a business partner, it could be a therapist. You may feel like a person that fits one of these descriptions is pushing you, is giving you a nudge into the direction of a new spiritual path. Maybe a path that feels a lot more empowering for you from a mental health perspective. I would also say that you may approach the topic of rest and retreat and getting away from the world differently after this eclipse, as a result of fated events that happen in your life, connected with friends, connected with partners, connected with relationships, and also connected with the energy that other people bring into your life. Oh, thank you so much, guys. You're always so nice. I appreciate the compliments. Thank you. Do take the time to rest. Do take the time to look inwards, my dear Sagittarius. Do take the time to take some time off, if you need to. If you're a Capricorn sun or a Capricorn rising, this eclipse, this solar eclipse on the 25th of October is happening in your 11th house. Mars is trining Mercury in your 10th house of career. It may feel like you have some fated encounters, Capricorns, in a group type of setup, in a group type of environment, such as when you're going out, when you're attending a conference, when you're attending classes and courses. It may feel like you have fated encounters and maybe powerful emotional experiences that help you approach relationships in the workplace a little bit differently. Approach the topic of maybe networking, forming connections a little bit differently. You may also experience a new beginning, a new collaborative beginning with a group of people that is very influential when it comes to your professional life, when it comes to your career. You could also join a highly influential group of people that will help you advance career-wise. Now, the whole advancement thing may not be very obvious to you until Mars goes out of retrograde. So Mars goes retrograde at the end of this month, and it goes out of retrograde on the 12th of January next year. So if you find yourself surrounded by a group of people that could help you move forward with your goals career-wise, I would still give it my all. I would still give it my best shot. I would still be highly involved. Also knowing that you may not yet see the results of your involvement with this group of people until probably the second half of January of next year. Let's see. I want to put it out there. Capricorns, Capricorn risings especially. A friend might say goodbye to you. Maybe because they're moving to a different place, a different city, for work-related purposes. It could be a bittersweet thing. You could be happy for them. On the other hand, you could be like, oh no, I'm saying goodbye to my friends. Or I'm saying goodbye to my friend who is going to offer me emotional support moving forward. So I see a question about houses. Please keep in mind, folks, that I use the whole sign house system. So if you're a Scorpio rising, it means Scorpio covers your first house, Sagittarius, your second house of income, Capricorn, your third house of communication, and so on. If you use Placidus or equal houses or any other house system, Regiomontanus, Alcabitius, you may notice that the eclipse happens in a different house in your chart. I use whole sign because I have found it to be the most accurate in my experience and in my clients' experience. But remember that houses are like languages. They're all correct. Use whatever resonates with you. In my practice, in my horoscopes, in my readings, I always use whole sign. Keep that in mind. Aquarius, Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings. 25th of October, week before, week after. You've got a solar eclipse in Scorpio in your 10th house of career. Yay! So, a new beginning, career-wise, in which probably a boss leaves the company, a manager leaves the company, maybe someone that has been potentially messing with your emotional balance. You could also let go of something that you had some sort of emotional attachment to professionally, and maybe the emotional attachment became a little bit toxic. You could also forgive something connected with your mother or something connected with the experience that you had of your mom growing up. A figure of authority may leave your life around this time, and it could make room for a sense of rebirth in your life. What I like is that Mars is trining Mercury and Libra in your 9th house. I want to say this. It feels like you're also letting go, maybe, of something professionally that you were emotionally attached to, but that was negatively impacting the enjoyment that you were experiencing in your life. You could make an announcement to the outside world and say, listen, I'm stepping down from this position because I want to travel more, or I want to have more fun, or I want to focus on my passions and hobbies. It is very, very, very possible. You could also leave behind a position, a role at work, because you're moving, maybe. It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. It's very possible. I want to say this, my lovely Aquarius, especially Aquarius risings. I see you. It's okay to give yourself permission to have more enjoyment in your life, to do more of what you like, even career-wise. And it's also okay to say, this is not for me, or this used to be for me, but it is not for me anymore. Some Aquarians, especially Aquarius risings, may experience some form of change of status in their public life, because the 10th house is also the public life, that is somehow connected with their children, if they have children, or that is connected with their legal status, or that is connected with their education, I'd say. You could also have fated encounters around this time with people that have some form of influence over your career path, over your career direction. Maybe they don't do anything directly, but they help you look at your career. They help you look at your professional life from a different angle, from a different standpoint, from a different perspective, I would say. And last but not least, Pisces risings and Pisces suns, but especially Pisces risings. Sarah, indeed, it is a solar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse. I made a mistake in the headline, and I'm going to amend this after the live is over. Pisces risings and Pisces suns. This eclipse in Scorpio is happening in your 9th house of foreign lands, foreign countries, belief systems, traveling, foreign affairs, your connection with God, with the divine. You may let go around this time, my dear Pisces, of an old, I want to say, limiting belief that you had some sort of attachment to. Maybe a limiting belief connected with intimacy, connected with sharing resources, connected with giving and receiving. I want to flag one thing, folks. You're going to be able to rewatch this live as a recording, so as a regular video, after the live is over. So I can see that some people are asking about Libra and Sagittarius. After the live is over, I think you can just kind of like scroll back. You might be able to scroll back even now. Just putting it out there. I don't know if it's possible, but just in case you joined later, you will be able to rewatch. So Pisces risings and Pisces suns, you're leaving behind an old limiting belief connected with intimacy, connected with sharing assets, connected with sharing resources, also connected with maybe other people's money. I want to say, you could also be releasing maybe an old emotional attachment connected with you being dependent, you relying on someone else's resources. You may have that aha moment in which you say, I don't need this. I don't need this person to always be there and kind of like blow the wind in my sails. And because you don't need them anymore, paradoxically, it may feel like the connection is maybe stronger. I dare say. There could be what feels like fated news from legal institutions connected with traveling, connected with visas. Maybe you can breathe a big kind of like sigh of relief connected with your maybe legal status when it comes to living somewhere else, when it comes to living abroad. I would also say that you may decide to let go of a belief that you inherited from your family's side. And it feels like a huge weight is being lifted off your chest. It's like, I don't have to live my life according to the life philosophy of my parents. And it can feel very freeing and very liberating. You may also have what feels like fated encounters abroad, my dear Pisces. You could feel inspired to visit places that you traveled to in the past. And if you do travel to places that you've been to in the past, you could have some aha moments, some experiences of awakening connected with your childhood that determine you to better understand yourself on a deep psychological level, my dear Pisces. Remember that if you have to do with legal matters, travel-related matters, Mars is going to go retrograde from the 30th of October until the 12th of January. So things may actually slow down a little bit after this new beginning, what feels like a fated new beginning connected with foreign lands, foreign countries, maybe connected with your studies and so on. So you could experience some delays until the retrograde is over. That doesn't mean that you're not headed in the right direction, my lovely Pisces. So folks, I hope that this has been useful. I hope that it has been a helpful update. Remember, if you want to work with me, you can find me on my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. That is writteninthestars-astrology.com. If you are a first-time client, you can go to the services section and book a 1-hour live Zoom consultation with me in which we can analyze your natal chart or look into the year ahead or analyze a specific life sector such as relationships or career and so on. If you're an existing client and you're interested in getting a personalized forecast for the year ahead, there is a forecast for the year ahead service option on my website. Remember that if you want to support my channel, you can become a member on YouTube, and that is much appreciated because it helps me continue to create this content accessible for all. If you want to support my channel but don't want to get a personal consultation, you don't want to dive deeper into understanding your natal chart, also into understanding the timeline of your life, the major life chapter that you are in, you can also support my channel with a super thanks. In this case, when it comes to live videos, with a super chat. It's been a pleasure to do this this live once again, and hopefully you are going to join me for the next live whenever this happens. Whenever I wake up and decide I'm gonna go live. Also remember that I will start doing at the end of this month live streams for members only. So if you're not a member on my channel, you will not have access to the live streams for members only. Just as an FYI. Have a great rest of your day, folks, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.